Hello there. My name is Lucas Dickey, and I am the CEO and founder of DeepCast. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos, but I know that folks have requested sort of a walkthrough of the product, especially as it's evolved, and we are migrating some of our knowledge-based and sort of customer support frequently asked questions from one platform to another. So in the meantime, I'm going to do a quick walkthrough. So in this case, I'm at the DeepCast creator website at deepcast.pro, somewhat like that. For a quick reminder for folks, we are imminently going to be rolling out new pricing in a three-tier fashion. So take a look at all the features that are going to be available on each and sort of the credit ramifications down here. But I would suggest going and looking at that deepcast.pro/pricing. I'm going to turn back to the homepage, or maybe I'll just go ahead and log in here. I am likely going to be authenticated using a username I already have on file. And in this case, I land straight on my landing page because I've already claimed this particular podcast. The level up button doesn't work because I'm actually a standard paying user, so I get all the premium features as well. So typically what I do is decide, in my case where I own multiple podcasts, I might go in here and hop into our Sound Strategy podcast, which is it's called Sound Strategy with Lucas Dickey, the most meta podcast about podcasting ever. Very much a good show for anyone that's a creator in the space. But looking at show details, you're effectively here looking at everything that comes through in the RSS feed. And then players are a reference to sort of we pull Apple Podcasts and Spotify, anything with Apple Podcasts, we're able to use to decide the podcast link for quite a few other players that use Apple's ID. If either one of these doesn't happen to be populated, you can either put the ID here, or if you had the URL for us, we could do Spotify, Joe Rogan, Open Web. Let's try that. And then we probably land here. And this ID right here could be grabbed, or the entire URL could be grabbed and dropped in here and saved, and that would catch up. But generally, we have these two. It's the others that we oftentimes don't, and we have the ability to add a few additional ones here thus far. Mind you, a few of these, like let's see, Pocket Cast, Overcast, Castro, we already infer those from the Apple ID, so those will be added as well. As you'll see, you have an opportunity to add website links that will show up within your pod site if you ultimately have one, and within deepcast.fm as well for your profile there. The same is the case for social media links that you can add that, again, would be used in that context. And lastly, crowdfunding links that you can also have accessible through deepcast.fm, as well as your own personal pod site, which we'll get to. So a lot of folks will frequently start with episode list, which makes a ton of sense. This is the most recent episodes that we've processed, starting with newest at the top and oldest at the bottom. You can also search by episode if you have quite a few, which some of our customers have into the hundreds. If there are any unprocessed items, they would show up here. And if I wanted to process them, I would click a button up here that says backfill. But currently, I don't have any to backfill, so they're all showing up here. The other thing that I can do is go over into draft mode, where I can process something that does not come through an RSS feed. So this one was published through an RSS feed. There's corresponding RSS feed episode from whoever my host is. In this case, I think it happens to be Spotify for creators, or maybe it's Buzzsprout. I think it's Buzzsprout. So in this case, this was an episode that we published on the 15th, which was 5 days ago. When you first click into it, there's info about it. Again, all of this comes from your RSS feed. If you ever need to go look into it, what is the audio that was referenced, duration, etc. And then from there on, this is kind of where we take over. So we do transcribing. In this case, occasionally it gets my name wrong, so I will fix that. You will notice that down below it's going to propagate an update. If I wanted to update just a specific speaker on one, I could change this to Fabian, and then I could change it back to me again, and it saves in the transcript. As you can see here, there's like timestamps listed. There's an option to download your transcripts, which will open them in a zip file, which I'm going to pull into this screen. And within there, you have all sorts of assets that are generated by us. But I think the important ones in this case are the VTT SRT, and then there's a diarized. All three of these typically work that you can upload to your RSS host so that they can add transcripts on your behalf that are the ones that you generated and augmented as opposed to the ones that the platforms such as Apple or Spotify or YouTube generated. These tend to have far more detail about who said what and at what time than what you would otherwise get with Apple and Spotify, where it's just a big block of text. And then you can also use these on your own website or Podsite, which we'll get into. So you can download, but obviously we were just editing here. Coming soon will be the ability to edit specific words in. We also generate a summary based upon interest. We, instead of having this distributed across a number of things, we now have this completed episode description. So with a single copy, this is now in my clipboard and includes a one-sentence description of the episode where the topics and key figures discussed, a short summary of it, some of the key quotes and key takeaways from it. This is very SEO and podcast search engine optimized, like rich. So it's good to have this sort of human readable, but also search friendly, keyword heavy description. So we have that, but we also generate for different use cases, like a single sentence short summary and long summary. For, say, you wanted to use this in a social context or you wanted to shoot this over Slack. So there's a bunch of different ways that you could do this. We generate insights for all this. You saw some of this referenced within that summary, including individual key takeaways, which are copyable one at a time, or you can copy all of them to your desktop as well, or your clipboard rather, and then paste them as you see fit. We do the same thing with the quotes. These are presented in a text-based fashion. And there's also this option to generate it as an image. So if I click this, what's happening right here now under the hood is we are generating an image optimized for each of the respective platforms. So X/Twitter, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Threads, and Facebook. And mind you, you can also, prior to that generation, if you see a typo, like let's say Quesada's with a Z and not an S, we could make that change, save it, and then it's going to re-render the images that it generates. If you find any typos in what it was that you did, or rather what we generated on your behalf in terms of the transcript or the person's spelling of their name, you can make that edit prior to. You also have this option to restore the previous version, which I'm just going to do for illustration purposes. So in this case, if I open this, it's going to generate, let's go to dedicated right now. So it'll generate it and it pulled in the quote, and then this URL here has an image that renders in some platforms but not others. But you now have an image with a link back to your pod site, as well as, sorry, this goes to DeepCast FM right now. We will be updating it to go to your pod site, and then you can share this page, which has the embedded quote in it, or the listen on link. So I think of this as like Podlink 2.0 in terms of being able to share a given quote, to sort of share context for what it was that was said, and the background on the episode. Really interesting thing to be able to share from a marketing perspective. So speaking of marketing perspective, people want to generate newsletters and blog posts. We take the contents of the podcast episode and turn that into two different variants. One of them is sort of like optimized for the email format, and then the other for a longer form blog. We're going to do some further iteration on this to sort of like create natural breaks, but I wanted to show you, like, we generated a blog post for this particular episode and published it on the DeepCast website on our resources. So I took this episode with Maribel Caseta-Smith, and I leveraged the transcript you see in the ever-evolving landscape, Maribel's origin. Actually, I regenerated this one, so that's why it's not matching. Oh, no, I actually took the newsletter inadvertently. So I took that. I chose to create some little header breaks in there, and I leveraged ChatGPT for that, just as an FYI. So now we have a additional piece of collateral based upon the podcast we created to drive yet more search engine optimization and discoverability of our podcast. And this was generated, again, off of this newsletter and blog post functionality. Another thing I wanted to show you in terms of use cases is on this insight front. Every episode has these key takeaways. What we've been doing is exerting them and then creating sort of themes for a given podcast. So I've got this like ocean theme going on right now that I'm leveraging for the show, and I'm putting in sort of the guests within each one of the slots, and you can see the ocean theme there. And then for each one of them, I've been creating like key takeaway cards, or in this case, like a presentation like this, but looking at say Adam Schabel, or sorry, Adam Scheibel's episode. I created something here that showed the image kind of expanding over time. I did the same thing here with Maribel Caseta Smith's episode, where I did like sort of took her original image and then generated variants leveraging these different carousel assets. And then if you go look at like the LinkedIn page or my LinkedIn page right now, I ended up saying, hey, here's 5 takeaways. Is it enough? No, but it's a place to start, right? Sort of catching attention. So in here, we have each one of these carouseled images based upon the takeaways that I grabbed directly from what was generated here. And it performs really well and it saves you a ton of steps trying to do these things. Going back to episode lists, or rather the one we were on, should I navigate it away? We also have social posts, which I was showing you before off of the quote. So these are the quote cards, but independent of the quote cards, we also generate LinkedIn posts and X posts. You might as well think of them as like long form and shorter form, and sort of tone and hashtags are different. And then, as with otherwise, there's the one click off to share it. In this case, right now, it goes to LinkedIn, and this one goes to X. You can take the same thing and paste it elsewhere, and we're going to be changing these sharing options soon. I did mention when we were talking about the episodes, there's this concept of draft episodes. So we have yet to publish our interview with Harry Duran about his podcast journey, but I wanted to have access to all of those assets so I could start creating the blog posts, so I could start creating the social assets, so I could start creating everything else. And so I did what you just saw there. I took an audio file that was local. I named a draft name for it. I grabbed it off of my local file system. We let it process by clicking this create episode. And then Harry's episode was ultimately created. And everything that you're used to seeing elsewhere within the published episodes is also here. So you can use these assets before you've actually published the episode, which is really helpful in the case of, say, the episode description. So you don't publish it once to RSS and then have to update it a second time, but instead grab what we generate from your episode in terms of the best way to summarize it for searchability purposes. And that goes again within your summary. So episode lists have 3 states. There's published, which have come in through your RSS feed and we've processed. There's backlog, which has come in through your RSS feed and we have not processed. And then there's draft episodes that you can publish. Backlog, and publishing episodes. All of these end up leveraging credits, which is each plan has its own credits. And I'm not going to cover it here, but it's basically free plan has the fewest, starter has more, and then standard has the most. If you have a daily show, I would suggest the standard plan for sure, just to cover your catalog. If you're managing multiple shows, you'll also want the standard plan. That's at $30 a month. If you're in every other week, the starter plan is probably fine for you unless you want to take advantage of all of the Podsite features. Before I jump into the Podsite features, I'm going to show 2 quick things. So we do have an option within DeepCast.fm to choose like a featured episode that we could do. So I'm going to do, like in this case, Maribel's episode. And we'll add that. So if anyone were to navigate to this on DeepCast.fm, this would be a featured episode. The same thing goes for featuring other sort of folks pod to pod. You want to make recommendations. So I have pod news on here in the feed from Libsyn. These are currently shown on DeepCast.fm, and we're working to expose. I can actually take it back. One of them would be on the homepage already of your pod site. I just featured this episode. So this is live. If I were to remove the featured episode and go back to there and refresh, you will notice that the recent one's there, but the featured one's not there anymore. So we do expose that. What we're not currently exposing is this, and we're looking into that. But speaking of Podsite, this is a sort of a one-click publish. Really, all you have to do is you step in and you click the publish button. You don't technically need to do anything beyond that. But when you publish it, it takes you to a page that looks something like this, but there's things that we've done to enrich it, like by choosing options. So For example, we chose the aqua theme, which fit with our ocean, and there's a bunch more to choose from. I'm not going to save these states, but you can see that I could have done a bluer ocean, or I could have just done this plum. I'm going to choose not to save that. We also have the concept of pages. So I put a page together to feature my co-hosts. In fact, this one I think is only partially completed. Yeah, there's a lot more to be done here, and I should be updating this. So for now, just to show it in action, I'm going to go ahead and save that change. And you will notice it actually kicked me over to the page, and in links, you should see live demo. So there's an issue here where I ran into a bug, so ignore that for now. But the idea would be that you can create a page called whatever you want to call the page, and we have all the styling that you might want to do here, and those will be preserved, and you can even pull in images if you want. And so it's kind of the things you'd be used to in a what you see is what you get editor. So you can add additional links as you see fit. We also do support custom domains. So in this case, this would have been podsite.fm / what is it? Sound-strategy, I think is the podsite.fm URL, but I chose to purchase a domain and hook it up, and we've got instructions for how to do that. Comments I have turned on. So anyone who leaves a comment on a particular episode, which I'm going to click into really quickly just to show you, you can leave a comment on here, and this is a test, or is it? I'm going to save that. This user has to be authenticated in order to leave that message, and I came in as alter ego just for a test. And if I were to refresh this, for example, you will now see that this is a test was on the Maribel episode. So you can go in. This gives you the option to delete them completely so that you can moderate as you see fit. We'll have more fine-grained controls later. You can also disable comments if you didn't want them at all, although they are a great way for someone to engage with your content. And then we've got DeepCast, or rather Deep Chat. So this one is really slick. So if you were on the homepage right now, or as I was, I could ask it a question like I did earlier. Did Maribel and Adam share any similar takeaways, I asked. And it generated for me, based on the transcripts, here's some similar takeaways. Focus on audience understanding. There's some strategic simplification you can do, your business growth strategy. In this case, each of these is linked. This one goes off to her episode. This one goes off to his, which makes a lot of sense given those were the two people that were quoted as saying the thing. And then now that I'm on here, I might as well go and ask, what did Adam say about software? I'm not even sure, honestly, if he brought up any software, but we're going to test it really quick here. And it will be generating a question. What it's doing is actually querying against the contents of your transcripts and some of the summarization we've done on top of it. So it looks like this is funny. So there's actually an AI hallucination, and it's less is better simplification filter. So I think he's just applying a concept here. But this is why we say it's in early development. But what's really cool about this idea is, as a podcaster, customer or listener is asking a question of my episode or of my podcast as a whole. And then as I go back here and I look at my chat tab, I can see what is being asked of the transcript. So I know, okay, people are interested in audio recording software, perhaps. Oh, are there themes that are emerging between episodes? Okay, here's another one. They actually asked across 4 whether there were similar observations. At some point, I think someone asked, why is it that this author, or Ilya, which was spelled wrong, but I got it right, what he thought about transcripts, what Joe at Mopod thought about tools or strategies employing as a podcaster. So there's a lot of things that you can use here to figure out what users or listeners are asking of your podcasts, and use that to inform possibly your sponsorship outreach strategy, your guest bookings, whether you should revisit a given guest, maybe rerun an episode, decide how you might want to reformulate your next episode. So a lot that you can find from how they're querying your content, which is very different than perhaps just a direct contact, which I alluded to earlier, by the way. because contact is turned on for this, the user can go and choose a topic type. So we're kind of guiding them down a path and then entering a subject and a message. This gets emailed to you. Your email is not exposed to them, and then it's up to you to choose whether you want to respond or not. We do have them authenticate to do this to prevent spam and phishing and bots, same as with DeepChat itself, which we were just showing you here. By the way, this user can generate a new one, and they can always go look at old ones. And then general, I kind of worked backwards here a little bit, but you can upload a logo for your pod site that is separate from your artwork. Otherwise, we just use the artwork that's on file. So in this case, logo, artwork. You can see that it is possible to embed YouTube content. I don't think I chose to do in this one, but I do believe we set up, let's try this, YouTube sound strategy with there. Oh, what do you know? There happens to be a podcast, which I'm guessing comes from this account, which does have a podcast. I'm going to click into. I'm going to do is go into here. I can grab this URL, drop this directly into here, and I can save it. And then what you will notice is back on the home page at soundstrategy.fm, our pod site, there's now a YouTube video embedded just below the deep chat. And as you'll notice, because this is an embedded playlist, they can jump ahead. So if you have a video format that's different than your audio format, you can also embed your YouTube video right here. And then we also have the contact page, which I showed you. I had it turned on. You have the option to turn it off. And earlier I was showing, like on the show details, that there's crowdfunding links, social media, and website. So here's all the player links. And I told you that if you had Apple, that we also added, Pocket Casts, Overcast, and Castbox. And then we automatically add the DeepCast link. If you have added social handles, those are also there as well. And then if you requested a support link be added or a direct crowdsourcing contribution, that's an option too. And then here were the links that we had. So I happen to be linking back to DeepCast.fm, DeepCast Creator, it targets a new window. So there's a lot of things that you can do across the site to create something that is truly yours from a pod site perspective. And maybe it goes back to like why have a pod site? You should have an authoritative brand presence that is your URL, because then you own the relationship with the customer. And it's not lost within native applications who own search and how things are presented to your users in the context of, say, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or otherwise. Ideally, you are the first thing that shows up when someone looks for anything related to your show, so that you can highlight your sponsors, you can highlight your content. So the first thing to do there is getting an authoritative website, which we think pod sites are a good example of, and then owning your domain and taking it over and running with it from there. Beyond pod sites, the other thing that's worth mentioning is if you do have multiple podcasts, this is a common question, how do I add another podcast? You can actually do it here by claiming another podcast, and this should put you on a screen that would have looked very familiar because it would have been the very first thing you saw when you logged in if you hadn't otherwise claimed a podcast. Another thing that you can do is get notifications when we've processed new episodes to your inbox, your email inbox. You know whether you want to go do anything with them or not. And then we do have a referral program. So if you want to share with friends, right now you get dollar credits applied to your account so that you can upgrade them. This looks like a typo, and it should say standard versus basic. So quick tour, reminder, show has the show level details. Episode has both published, backlog or unpublished, and then the ability to do drafts so you can use them for marketing purposes before the release of your episode. We have the pod sites that you can leverage for your own bespoke, automated, always live podcast website, and then things you can do to customize across DeepCast.fm as well as your own pod site. So it's all here. Leverage those transcripts, leverage those insights, the search engine optimization, keyword recommendations, the website, all in one, DeepCast.pro. You can always feel free to connect with us at hello@DeepCast.pro, or if you log into your dashboard, you will notice that this is sitting here. And 9 times out of 10 right now, it is me checking it because I want to hear what you have to say. So again, I'm Lucas Dickey, founder and CEO of DeepCast, and I hope you get a lot of value out of the product we're creating for you. We want you to be able to identify new customers or listeners. We want you to be able to connect with your listeners. We want your advertisers to be able to find you because they know who you're talking to. All of this to help you grow, monetize, and make your show more discoverable and engaging.